Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and this is the second last video in the end of the year series. And if you've been watching all of them, thank you so much. I'm very grateful and thankful to you. Thank you for staying here. Yay, I love you a lot. Okay, cool. Now let's move on to another topic that I wanted to let you guys know that tomorrow is going to be the last video of this end of the year video series that I'm doing, and it's going to be my 1K Q&A. So if you've not put in your questions yet, the link is below in the description box as well. Go to the video, put your question on that video, and I have not gone through all of them. I know some people have commented on it, but I just browsed through it. So basically what I'm going to do is tomorrow you have time till 10 a.m. IST 3rd Jan, and after 10 a.m. I'm going to be sitting with these questions and I'm going to be answering them candid, kind of on camera, not exactly live, but then I'll just be like giving on the spot answers to that. So if that's a thing you want to see, if that's something that you want to if you want to know anything, basically any kind of answers, then here's it. This is what you need to watch. Okay, anyway, that being said, let's move on to the video that I'm kind of filming right now, and that is the December 2020 wrap up. Now let's start. This is like the usual drill. I always start from 0 stars to 5 stars, and my least rated books this month are 3 stars. So let's start with the 3 stars. The first book that I rated 3 stars is By Grand Central Station I Sat Down and Wept by Elizabeth Smart. This is more like a non-fiction book, but written in a poetic prose format, which kind of describes Elizabeth Smart's affair with George Parker, who is an asshole. Okay, like literally George Parker was an asshole, and Elizabeth Smart was obsessed with him, and the book talks about her obsession with this man. Now the only reason I think people love this book is because of the poetic prose, and I am not a big fan of poetic prose. Like, I appreciate it a lot, but I don't like it, and I have to be in a certain mindset to read it as well. So if you're looking for something that's much like poetic prose, or something that's very much literary, like literary slash cult prose basically, then this is a good book you can read. Like, if you are looking, like if you're into writing, and if you love like different forms of writing, and as a reader you want to transition to becoming a writer, and you want to like kind of consume a lot of writing styles in general, then again this is a good book that you can read. And I wouldn't say that I didn't like it. I liked it a lot. I rated it 3 stars, but the point is it didn't have a major impact on me, because that whole obsession for me was very toxic, and I think by now you should know that I don't like toxic relationships in general. Also, I don't like misogynistic people in general as well, and George Parker, although he was married, had an affair with Elizabeth Smart, and that was just unacceptable for me by my standards. Maybe I have like high standards when it comes to relationships, but yeah, that's that. Let's get on to my next book, which I rated 3 stars, and that is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I'm very sorry to all the people who love this book, but unfortunately for me, I didn't appreciate this book much. It was just like a meh for me. The reason why it's a meh is because I have outgrown YA, like, of this form. Okay, although this is YA contemporary and I only read YA contemporary, my problem with this particular book is that it only kind of talks to the 19-20-year-olds. Maybe if I would have read this when I was in my late teen years, or if I would have read this maybe in my early 20s, I would have loved it. But having read so many books by now, not so many, but then a sufficient amount of books by now, this is one book that I did not appreciate much. And I think next time when I go and select a YA contemporary book, I'm going to ensure that it kind of transcends a lot of, I would say, ages, and it's not like specific to one age per se. But yeah, I mean, 2020 has been the realization that I may not like a few YA contemporary books that I might have loved before, but yeah, that's the whole thing of it. But it's a nice book. I'm not going to deny it. It's a nice book. It's a sweet, cute book, and I really like the LGBTQ factor of it as well, and I appreciate that part as well. But yeah, again, I've outgrown it. I've outgrown this theme a lot, so that's why it's not for me. Now let's get to the book that I rated 3.5 stars, and honestly this was supposed to be like 2 or 3 stars, and finally in the last 50% it got to be 3.5, and that's this one. This is Transcendent Kingdom by Ajasi. So I kept telling on all my weekly reads that this is like a sequel to Homegoing, and later on I felt stupid because this is actually not a sequel to Homegoing, it is an extension of Homegoing, and it is only set in the same universe as Homegoing. I did go back to my copy of Homegoing to check, what happened at the end, to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And I realized that this was like a complete standalone to Homegoing, although the author calls it as a follow-up. Also, one of the biggest things I kept doing was to compare this with Homegoing, understanding this whole situation here. But this was a drag. Okay, the first 50% of the book was a total drag. I understand the theme of the book, but then it didn't have to like drag itself so much. But the last 50%, I really appreciated it a lot. This book is about Gifty and Nana and her and their mother and Chin Chin Man, basically, who's their father. And these people are immigrants from Ghana in Alabama. Okay, so basically it talks a lot about the church, the way they try to make ends meet, and the book starts off with Gifty. She is currently at Stanford. She is, I think, doing her she's her post graduation actually in neuroscience. So it's a very interesting take on the whole African immigrant story, and I really appreciate it for that. But then the writing was something that it irked me a lot, especially like how things are very slow at first, and then finally in the last 50% things happen. That's why I added the 0.5 stars, right? So the message is nice, everything's nice, but it was just like too slow for me. I think the first 50% of the book just felt like I was reading the first 50% of Shaggy Bane. Sorry, I know. Anyway, that being said, yeah, that's it for this book, and I'm pretty much disappointed in Ya Jasi at this point of time. So Ya Jasi, if you're getting out a new book, please make it as good as Homegoing or better than Homegoing, because you've already set the benchmark like super high and it's hard for it to get down. Okay, cool, that's that. Okay, cool. Now let's get to my books that I rated 4 stars. Yes. So if I have to recommend books, then I generally recommend my 4 and 5 star reads only. I don't recommend reading my 3 stars generally, because for 3 star for me is just like it just consumes bookshelf space away. So maybe one day this is going into some donation pile, all these books that I mentioned here. Okay, cool. Let's go with my 4 stars. The first book that I rated 4 stars was Offshore by Penelope Fitzgerald, and this particular book won the Booker Prize in 1979. It's basically regarding a bunch of people who live on boats in London on River Thames, and these people are either living on boats out of need, out of necessity, or out of like pure luxury, like they don't have anything better. So that's what the story is about. I think like the bunch of characters are very much like lovely. I love Penelope Fitzgerald's ideas in general, and also there's even a water police station. There's even like a nurse, like there are 3 nurses who live on boats as well. So it's very interesting because it has a diverse number of characters, and it talks about how people are living through all of these kind of situations. It's a very interesting character study per se. I mean, there's not much to plot because this is a literary read, but then the character development and the character study is actually very nice. So if you like reading those Booker books that are not commercialized and those rare books that actually won the Booker Prize at one point of time, then this is a nice read, and I think you'll enjoy it as well. So moving on to the next book that I rated 4 stars, and that was Intersections by Gautam S. Mingle. So this is actually a crime thriller based in Bombay, and Gautam S. Mingle, like I've said 100 times before, was actually an apprentice or someone who used to work under Hussain Zaidi. Hussain Zaidi is of the Dongri to Dubai, Baikala to Bangkok fame, who writes non-fiction about well-known gangsters and underworld dons in India. And this book kind of is not, sorry, this kind of book is actually fiction, and it talks about our inspector who is Uday Mhatre, and it talks about all of these things that's happening. So apparently there's something, like there's an impending event and a tragedy that's going to happen, and this guy on the cover needs to save the city. The reason I like this book is because, first thing, Gautam Singh himself was an investigative journalist, and currently he is in the cybercrime field, so he's more like a cybercrime journalist, but he knows the ins and outs of Mumbai police, Maharashtra police, like the way the police works, and the new policing, yeah, the new tactics of policing in, I hope that's a word. Anyway, so new ways people, the police inspectors and the police force uses in order to track criminals and terrorists, and that's what's described in the book in a very factual way. Generally, when I read like fiction, I always see that there's always this like extra factor added in, whether these beautiful machines and all of this stuff that they have, like a sci-fi movie, but this one doesn't have that, and it's a very good book for beginners. So if you're based in Bombay and you want to read crime thrillers based in Bombay, this is a good pick. Or if you're a beginner and you hardly read, this is again a good pick. Simple language, factual content, like it's just like A to Z neat. So I appreciated this a lot. Now, that being said, my next book that I rated 4 stars was The Free Voice by Ravish Kumar. I spoke about this in my weekly reads in the past week, and it's actually a pretty short book. It's like a 5-hour audiobook. I really appreciated this book a lot because it talks about things in, Ravish Kumar is a very famous Indian journalist, and he's very critical of a lot of like things that happen in media. So there is a Fox News equivalent media house in India which is just shitty, and Ravish Kumar is like the biggest criticizer of this media house. And basically it's just that the whole situation, with all of the stupid stuff that has happened in 2020, including the suicide of a very famous actor and stuff like that. Like this book, although it was written about 3 to 4 years back, it still stays relevant. Okay, it still stays relevant. It talks about how journalists spew hatred, how journalists support politicians who spew hatred, and it talks about things in the most unbiased manner. And he attempts to do that, and that's what I appreciated. Although it is a bit left-leaning, and you can see that it's a bit left-leaning, but the attempt of staying unbiased is very much appreciated. And also it also talks about a lot of like things that happen in India, like especially he criticizes a lot of right-leaning activities as well, including how right-leaning people don't like Valentine's Day and stuff like that. So it's a great non-fiction read if you're an Indian and you want to know the state and how can you improve the situation of India and this divide that we see that the media and the politicians spew. So that being said, good read, much appreciated, and a much needed book in today's times. That being said, let's get on to the books that are rated 4.5 stars. So there are always books I rate between 4 stars and 5 stars, and this month it is 4.5 stars for Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel. And honestly, I really appreciate this book. This is like an amazing sequel to Wolf Hall, okay? And although I knew what was going to happen in the end, because I kind of googled and spoiled the whole thing myself, because even if you Google Thomas Cromwell, you get to know a lot of stuff. So I don't know much about Thomas Cromwell, but I did Google Anne and quite a few other characters, basically like the bodies that need to be brought up, and I knew what's going to happen kind of. But then that didn't spoil the fun for me, because I really appreciated the way Hilary Mantel writes. Also, that being said, one of the things that she does kind of mention is this, that this book, this series is not to document Anne or Henry VIII's life, but instead it is to document Thomas Cromwell's life, because Thomas Cromwell was very much dedicated to serving the English monarchy, and he was a very ambitious and a shrewd lawyer as well. So yeah, I mean, if you love historical fiction and if you've not read Wolf Hall, you have not even read historical fiction yet. It's historical fiction of a, like, I don't know, like, it's a very, very, very nice book, honestly. Okay, and I hope to read Mirror on the Light in 2021. So let's see how that goes. Now, let's get to my 5-star reads of this month. Okay, so I've spoken about both of these somewhere, in my end of the year series or in my weekly reads. But anyway, let's go for this one. My first book that I rated 5 stars this month was Sway by Matthew Bocci. I really, really like this memoir. It talks about Matthew's father, John Bocci, who actually passed away during 9/11. And I've spoken about this before. It's a book that you should pick up if you want to know more about 9/11 and the aftermath it had on families, specifically, like families, because then it talks about the sexual abuse and the drug abuse that the author faced later on in their life because of their father's death. It's a nice memoir. I listened to the audiobook, and also it's a short audiobook of 5 hours. It's like a nice audiobook as well. I recommend this book if you want to know more about 9/11 in general. So that being said, another book that I did finish this month was again a 9/11 book, and that's Reluctant Hero. And I've spoken about this book, and it actually is about Michael Benfante and John Cerquera, who actually carried down a differently abled woman in a wheelchair 68 floors down on the day of the 9/11 tragedy. The reason I love this book is not only it describes the heroic act, but it also describes the emotions and the mental impact of the whole incident post 9/11, and it also describes how people like 2 to 3 years later viewed 9/11. Like, basically talks about how the media kind of mishandled the situation 2 to 3 years later 9/11, and how politicians just wanted to put things into that particular, I don't know, the bucket of hatred. And also Michael Benfante criticizes a lot of things that happened to him in the aftermath, and it also talks about the day when this happened to him. So it's a nice 9/11 read as well. Again, it's not as heartbreaking as Sway, because Sway is very heartbreaking, but this one is heartbreaking for sure. Now, that being said, the last book that I rated 5 stars in this list, well, this is in no particular order. It's just that I just clubbed the 9/11 books together because it made more sense to do that. And the final one is a kind of a happy read, and that's Bombay Bell Ciao by Jane Borges. I love this book. I cannot stop raving about this book. And honestly, it's a great short story book on Bombay. It captures the vibe of Bombay in a very nice, light. It kind of talks about a group of people who are amazing, and it's just very sad and very funny at times. And I really, really appreciate Jane Borges' writing. And if I want to write a book, again, Jane Borges is my literary inspiration here, because I really love the genre and her writing style for sure. So that's it. That's my December 2020 wrap up. And yeah, I am glad that I read these books in 2020. I'm very glad about the same. But then again, like I said, in 2021, I want to keep it 4 books a month and not so many books a month, because I'm just trying to slow down in general. Okay, cool. That's it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my tomorrow's video. Don't forget, it's a Q&A. So I hope to see you there, and I hope to see your question as well. Okay, cool. Bye.